The frequency or cadence in which you create and release new episodes is very important. In fact, it's one of the most important parts of gaining and retaining your audience. The most common release cadence for popular shows tends to be weekly. However, some shows do a bi-weekly or monthly releases, and there are even a few shows that choose to do daily releases, while it's very hard to maintain. Here are a few tips whenever it comes to deciding what frequency or cadence may be best for your show. Number 1, consistency. Pick a release day and time and stick to it. As you gain new listeners, you'll want them to know when they can come back to get the next episode. Ideally, your podcast will become a part of their regular weekly routine, and listening to your podcast will become a habit for them that they can't break. If you deviate from your release schedule or decide to take time off, just make sure that you communicate this to your listeners as well as when you'll be back. Let your listeners know whenever they can expect new episodes so they can fit your show into their routine. Listeners will naturally learn your release cadence, but I strongly suggest that you clearly communicate this to your listeners so they know the day and the time to come back. Number 2, be realistic. If you're able to release one episode a week, I would strongly encourage you to consider that. Several podcasters that I've worked with were overambitious in the beginning. They wanted to do 2 or 3 episodes a week. And some of them quickly realized that they had taken off more than they could manage, and they had to scale back. The problem with this is that their listeners had gotten used to getting 2 to 3 episodes a week. And whenever they had to scale back to 1 or even take a few weeks off to catch up, their listeners were disappointed, and some of them never came back. So choose a realistic cadence and stick with it. You'll always be better off under-promising and over-delivering rather than over-promising and under-delivering. You can always increase your release cadence down the road and exceed your listeners' expectations. Work ahead. Without fail, it almost always happens. No matter the creative venture or how far you work ahead, at some point the release schedule catches up with you and you're working week to week. The pressure's on. I've helped create or produce several podcasts where we started writing, recording, and producing months before our release date. We were confident that we had planned more than enough time. When I was producing the first season of Culpable, we had the first 5 episodes complete whenever we released episode 1. We were basically a month and a week ahead of schedule. I thought we had more than enough time. By the time episode 7 had released, we had just started working on episode 8. And whenever working with Payne Lindsay on Up and Vanished, most weeks we were working up until midnight or later to get episodes out on their release day. My advice, whatever amount of time you think you'll need, double that until you develop a good system and process. One common question I get asked often is, how long should my episodes be? There's no right answer to this. You have to evaluate this based off your situation and your listeners. The average podcast length is in the 35 to 45 minute range. With that being said, there are shows like the Joe Rogan Experience that have episodes longer than 4 hours. At the end of the day, you have to consider the depth of your content that you're covering in each episode, audience preference, and aim for a duration that keeps listeners engaged. But overall, focus less on the length of your episode and more on making sure your content is engaging and brings value to your listeners. Don't make your episodes so short that they lack any real value. And don't make your episodes so long that you beat a dead horse or you bore your listeners to death. Try to find that sweet spot where you provide immense value, but leave your listeners wanting to come back for more. Shows that release less frequently typically tend to be longer, and shows that release more frequently, like a daily or 2 or 3 times a week, tend to be shorter in length. Remember, consistency is key when it comes to gaining and retaining listeners. Be realistic in what you can accomplish, plan more time than you need, and always work ahead when possible.